So it turns out that it didn't take long for us to get our first transporter accident episode. And it was the very next episode after Dr. McCoy first said he didn't trust the things. When are people going to start listening to that guy? One Kirk went down to the planet, but two Kirks come back. And not only do we get all of the supposedly good qualities in one and all of the supposedly bad qualities in the other, they both had completely different acting teachers. It's a race against time to make one Kirk better than two again in The Enemy Within. Hit it!
Hey!
So Star Trek takes a big risk on this one. We're taking our dashing, unflappable, heroic captain and flaying him open on a Freudian slab for his crew and the audience to see. And it's only the 4th episode. It would end up being broadcast as the 5th episode, but come on, same difference, right? And while we got hints of the holy trinity of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy up to this point, this episode finally firmly establishes it in some really great scenes. So let's get started with a look at the plot. We start down on planet whatever the hell, where Kirk is overseeing some sample gathering and general sciencing with Sulu and the boys, and a space dog apparently, when all of a sudden there's a yelp from off camera. Crewman Ninja Feet over here fell down a mountain and sliced open his hand. He's also covered in this yellow ore, which he of course blames for his frontside kickflip faceplant, and after looking at his hand, Kirk orders him back to the ship to report to sickbay. Scotty beams him up, but the transporter acts a little funny, and the crewman is a little slow to materialize. Scotty checks out the yellow dust on old Buttertoes' coverall, sees that it's got some weird properties, and starts looking into why that might have made the transporter act so hinky. He seems to get it up and running again, but sends his buddy Wilson for a what's-it to double check. But instead of waiting for his buddy to get back with the thing, which, in fairness, could be like forever, what better way to test the transporter now than running the captain through the thing? That's smart thinking, Scotty. Well, Kirk seems to show up fine, though it looks like the patch on his shirt didn't beam up with him. But he also feels a little woozy, so Scotty helps him out of the transporter room. And while no one is in the transporter room, it activates again, and somebody else appears. After a step or two backwards, the guy whips around to reveal that he's none other than Captain Kirk. Also with no patch on his shirt, but this one's got dramatic underlining and eyeliner on. Well, dramatic lighting Kirk shows up in sickbay, where crewman Klutzberg is being seen to, and he demands saurian brandy from McCoy like a total jerk. No idea why McCoy's got the saurian brandy. What is he, a doctor or a bartender? Well, brandy in hand, drama Kirk leaves and goes strutting around the ship. Meanwhile, seemingly normal Kirk is in his quarters, and Spock arrives asking, what's the deal with freaking McCoy out like that? Kirk says he don't know what Spock's talking about, and suggests McCoy is playing a prank on Spock, which totally sounds like something he would do. What is he, a doctor or an impractical joker? Well, Scotty calls Kirk and Spock down to the transporter room, because he just beamed up Space Dog, and it split into 2 duplicate Space Dogs. Only one of them is sweet and chill, and the other one is basically my girlfriend from senior year. He says we can't bring up any people, because who knows what it would do to them. Which sucks, because the planet that Sulu and his team is on gets down to 120 below zero at night, and the sun's going down. Enter the ticking clock. Well, Drama Kirk finds his way to Yeoman Rand's quarters and sexually assaults her. She fends him off, managing to scratch his face, and calls for help from crewman Dexterity of 3 who happen to be walking by. As Dick Grayson over here is calling for help on the intercom, Bad Kirk beats the snot out of him and runs off. Soon after, a massively traumatized Rand is recounting the incident to McCoy with Kirk and Spock present. Kirk maintains it wasn't him, noting that he don't got the scratches on his face that Rand was describing. But Trip McFalls-a-Lot is also there and confirms that it was indeed the captain. Spock surmises there must be an imposter on board. If anybody is thinking about the thing with Space Dog, nobody is indicating it in any way until the next scene, where Scotty elaborates on what's going on with the transporter. Spock and Kirk clearly now realize the imposter is actually a duplicated Kirk, only like Space Dog's dupe is a total asshole. Kirk and Spock discuss what they ought to do. Kirk wants to inform the crew of the truth, But Spock puts a stop to that, saying that Kirk don't got the luxury of appearing to the crew as anything other than perfect. Kirk agrees to this, but doesn't understand why he lost sight of that. Looks like this Kirk is just as messed up as the other Kirk, just in the opposite direction. He tells Spock to keep a watch on him, and if he starts to slip again, give him a little goose so he'll knock it off. They decide to tell the crew that the other Kirk is an imposter, and he needs to be found. Since they don't know what'll happen to good Kirk if bad Kirk gets killed, they tell the crew to only use the stun setting on their phasers to subdue him. Bad Kirk is hiding in his/their quarters, and when he hears the announcement, he goes a little cuckoo. Then, since good Kirk told everybody the imposter had scratches on his face, he grabs some pancake makeup that Kirk apparently keeps around his quarters for reasons that ain't none of your business, and uses it to cover him up. He pokes his head out of his quarters and sees crewman Wilson walking by, presumably still on his way to get that thing to test the transporter, and he stops him. He asks him for his phaser, and while making small talk, asking how he's doing, if his aunt ever got that thing removed, that kind of thing, suddenly beats the snot out of him and runs off. Well, now he has a phaser. Ho, ho, ho. Wilson's unfortunate incident gets reported to good Kirk, who's hanging out in the briefing room with Spock, and Spock figures since bad Kirk knew about Wilson's aunt and her disgusting growth, he must have all the knowledge that good Kirk does about the ship and the crew and all that. So he asks good Kirk where he would go if he was trying not to be found. Cut to the engineering deck. Kirk and Spock search for bad Kirk, who is in fact there, so Spock with the good call there, and as they split up to search for him, bad Kirk gets the drop on good Kirk. But Spock comes out of the shadows, does a Vulcan nerve pinch, and bad Kirk is down for the count. Down on the planet, things are getting worse, as Sulu, who's keeping a remarkably positive attitude about all this, is starting to freeze to death along with the rest of the team. Any attempt to beam heaters or other equipment down to them results in duplication into presumably good and evil heaters, but the important thing is they don't work. So Sulu and the boys only have blankets and their uniforms to keep them warm, and velour don't insulate well. While bad Kirk's strapped to a medical bed, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy discuss the duality of man. Spock talks about how he's got unique experience in duality because he's half Vulcan and half human, and his intellect forces them to coexist. They also talk about how a lot of what makes Kirk, or anyone else for that matter, an effective leader resides in bad Kirk. That good Kirk's got the compassion and a lot of the intellect, and those are important too, but it's crucial that they recombine the two, because neither one can exist without the other. Figuratively, but also literally, bad Kirk is dying, and so is good Kirk, so it's gotta happen. Spock and Scotty think they've got the transporter situation figured out, but they want to test it on the space dogs. They do, and it kills the space dog deader than hell. But the important thing is, there's only one dead space dog. They did recombine. Spock says the animal don't know what's going on and couldn't handle the shock of being recombined like that, but that Kirk, being a reasoning human, would not have the same problem. McCoy isn't convinced. Elsewhere, Kirk gets a call from Sulu, who wanted to check in real quick before he completely passed out from the cold, and then he passes out from the cold. Good Kirk knows he's got to do something, so he tells bad Kirk, we're doing the transporter thing. Bad Kirk agrees to it, and when good Kirk releases him from the restraints, bad Kirk, believing heavily in the comedic rule of 3, beats the snot out of him and runs off. He goes straight to the bridge and tells everybody, you know what? We're out of here. We're ditching those frozen losers and taking off. Spock seems a little puzzled, and then good Kirk and McCoy show up, and everybody gets even more confused. Good Kirk talks bad Kirk into breaking down, a skill that he'll use on computers later on. I did a whole video about that. And while bad Kirk is incapacitated, they get both Kirks on the transporter platform. Spock throws the switch, and presto, normal Kirk is back. They beam the landing party up. McCoy says they got some frostbite, but they're gonna make it. All's well that ends well, right? Sulu, I think you dropped your nose over there. Great stuff. So, no kidding, I love watching William Shatner in this episode. Shatner's bad Kirk is a joy to watch, for the most part. More on that later. And the subtlety of his depiction of the good Kirk slowly weakening and becoming less and less able to make decisions is really excellent. I have to think that he had the best time shooting this episode. And one of the best lines of the episode, not for its writing, but for its delivery, is this right here.
Repeat, the imposter is not to be injured.
I'm Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk! I'm Captain Kirk!
You gotta love it. As much as we see it a captain, we really get to explore the character of Spock a lot in this one too.
You're the captain of this ship. You haven't the right to be vulnerable in the eyes of the crew. You can't afford the luxury of being anything less than perfect. If you do, they lose faith, and you lose command.
We've known Spock to be a stoic scientist, but we get a taste of his cold pragmatism in this, and see that there's a dispassionate wisdom that extends far beyond just pure science.
If I seem insensitive to what you're going through, Captain, understand. It's the way I am.
Yeah, Spock just told Kirk that if he seems like he's being a jerk, well, tough shit. McCoy gets a few off in this episode too.
A lot of what he is makes you the man you are. God forbid I should have to agree with Spock, but he was right. Without the negative side, you wouldn't be the captain. You couldn't be, and you know it. Your strength of command lies mostly in him.
We're going to touch on this in the last part, but McCoy lays out the thesis statement for this episode right here. And this is a line that needed to come from him. As the id and the id ego superego Kirk Spock McCoy thing, for him to be the one to recognize that means a lot more. And another great line from McCoy.
He's dead, Jim.
The beginning of a catchphrase, ladies and gentlemen, and it was about Space Dog. I have to take a second here and really applaud the VFX guys for the phenomenal job they did with the split screening and depicting the two Kirks. It really came off flawlessly. Using split screen kind of sparingly, only in 2 shots, and letting precise cuts from one Kirk to the other with Eddie Paskey as Kirk's body double do a lot of the heavy lifting. One part I liked in particular is the brilliant use of this mesh in the engineering deck to be able to see evil Kirk sneak up on good Kirk over good Kirk's shoulder. DP Jerry Finneman pulled this shot off perfectly. Now, in the era of 4K television, it's pretty easy to see it's Shatner's body double, but at the time, the illusion was definitely a success. Really well done. Speaking of the engineering deck, hey, first look at engineering, and the set is really excellent. They built it for this episode, and they made good use of the space they had and designed techniques like forced perspective to make a room that felt really big and important. And finally, since McCoy got to kick off one of his signature things in this episode, and we introduced the cool and casual green wraparound tunic for Kirk, we gotta throw one in there for Spock too. Namely, the Vulcan nerve pinch. By now, the story's pretty famous, but in case you ain't heard it, Leonard Nimoy was reading the script, and it called for Spock to pop out of the shadows in engineering as evil Kirk was threatening good Kirk and clock him upside the head with his phaser. Nimoy didn't think that was in character for Spock, so on the day of shooting, he came up with a pinch on Kirk's neck, and that, coupled with Shatner's ability to sell it in that patented Shatner way, made the Vulcan nerve pinch an instant success. Roddenberry loved it, but was pretty annoyed that he didn't know it was happening until he saw it in the dailies. But you know that saying about permission and forgiveness, right? The Goof. Okay, so I can't bring myself to put Space Dog completely in the Goof section. Yeah, it's pretty obviously a dog in some kind of furry dragon costume, but I don't know, I like him. Sometimes the Goof can be fun, and this is one of those times. Also, hats off to both of those dogs for putting up with having that costume on. It was cute, but one thing it didn't look was comfortable. A side note on Space Dog, what was it doing on that planet? Does it live in negative 120 degree cold, or was there a Space Dog cave that Sulu and the boys could have hidden out in? I know it was just there to clue our heroes in on the transporter problem, which it did by beaming up by itself, which was also kind of weird, but it does raise a lot of questions. One of the other things that kind of bugs me about this episode is just how long it takes everybody to put 2 and 2 together and deduce that the same thing that happened to Space Dog happened to Kirk. Scotty knows the timeline. He knows crewman coordination beamed up covered in yellow curry powder causing the problem, then Kirk beamed up, and then Space Dog, which split into 2 versions, one docile, one crazy balls. How does he miss that? Seems like at least Spock would have figured it out right off the bat when he hears about Space Dog. Well, it turns out there's a reason for that. Episode director Leo Penn, Sean Penn's dad by the way, was known to switch scenes around if he thought it was going to be more dramatic. Originally, the timeline went Kirk beams up, Yeoman Rand is attacked and Kirk, Spock, and McCoy learn about it. Then Space Dog beams up and Scotty discovers the transporter is busted. When he talks about how there's no telling what would happen if you put a dude through there, it dawns on Kirk and Spock what happened and who that was that attacked Rand. Now, admittedly, even in that order, Scotty should have remembered Kirk beamed up after Yellow Curry Pants, so no idea what his excuse is, but it does get Kirk and Spock off the hook. But then it happens again at the end when Bad Kirk tries to leave orbit and abandon the Sulu Sickle and his buddies. Spock's all, "Are you sure? I thought we talked about this." How was there even a moment's hesitation there? As soon as he came on the bridge all confident and projecting from the diaphragm that they're taking off and whatnot, Spock should have been pinching necks like a vampire sock puppet. Everybody knew about the imposter at that point, and no one could possibly think Kirk cutting crew members loose like that was normal behavior. It's a little weird. And finally, I don't really like it when a plot complication comes down to dumb luck. Does it happen in real life sometimes? Sure, but this ain't real life. This is a crafted and purposefully written story, and it feels a little lazy. Bad Kirk happening to blast just the right transporter circuit when he got neck pinched is a little annoying, but what are you gonna do? Ruminations. All joking aside for a moment, that rape scene is very difficult to watch. But not nearly as difficult to watch as the scene where she's reporting the incident to McCoy and has to tearfully recount what happened sitting in a chair while 3 dudes stand over her, and then to hear how she wasn't going to say nothing because he was the captain and she didn't want to get him in trouble. It's just heartbreaking. We know that Kirk, Spock, and McCoy aren't trying to pressure her into saying those things, but with them towering over her like that, who could blame her for feeling that way anyway? Not only are they imposing, and one of them is the one she thinks is the actual attacker, but these are the 3 top authority figures on the ship. And women are pressured into this kind of response both directly and in a more general societal way all the time. More so back then, but it still happens way too much even today. But the icing on the cake is this line right here.
The imposter had some interesting qualities, wouldn't you say? Human.
This is the captain speaking.
You gotta be kidding me. This has to be the single downright ugliest, grossest line in all of Star Trek. I don't know who's responsible for that line, whether it's episode writer Richard Matheson or if it came from someone else in a rewrite. But whoever it was needs a kick in the ass. Hard. Alright, moving on. The episode's theme is a little on the nose, but it's still an interesting one, and they handle it really well. And like I said, it's pretty early in the series to show the captain like this. Much more so to come out and explicitly state that the hero of our show needs the aggression and the other ostensibly negative traits in order to be a good captain and leader. That's pretty bold. It's also kind of fun to sort of miss the point and try to figure out just what's actually going on here, right? Like, aside from the guy liner, what exactly would be the physical difference between these 2 Kirks? If they were both unconscious and had sleeping masks on so you didn't see their eyes, would McCoy be able to tell them apart with a medical scan? And why did they split like that? Why not one Kirk who was all right brain, poetry, emotion, creativity and stuff, running around all Doug Henning and whatnot, and the other all left brain, logic and calculations? There's plenty of great potential for scenes with Spock, where left Kirk is trying to debate Spock, but right Kirk keeps bugging him to play the Vulcan liar or something. Or maybe he splits into just the part that can dance and the rest of him, but Kirk can't dance very well, so that part of him's only like 1.5 feet tall. You could do a whole series of these. All in all, this is a fun episode and a classic. This is one of those episodes when people who don't even like Star Trek very much are familiar with. And it's a trendsetter in that this is just the first of many, many episodes that proves McCoy is the only one with a sane attitude when it comes to the transporter. So there you have it, The Enemy Within. What did you think of Shatner's performance in this one? I'd love to hear about it in the comments down there. If you're liking these reviews of Classic Trek, let me know by hitting that like button down there. It helps the channel a lot and lets me know you dug it. So I'll keep doing it, right? As I record this, there are 997 subscribers to the channel. If you haven't subscribed but you're digging the show, help a possum out and click that button and join the possum friends, huh? Ring the bell and all that so you don't miss the next episode when it drops. Next outing, our intrepid crew encounters a shape-shifting salt vampire. Right? So until next time, possum friends are awesome friends. Take it easy, alright? Later.